teenagers, they get into trouble at school, like maybe with their friends, or we know a lot of things happening in the country where teenagers get into wrong with mingle with wrong friends
Friend
and things like that.
groups. Yeah.
Wrong group.
And then they are in danger, and they don't speak up to anybody. They don't speak up to their parents when they get home, even their teachers, for the fear of being labeled. So hello everybody, welcome again to Akomolafe family channel. So today is a special day. We are here to discuss two topics actually, and are very, very important, especially to us that are parents. Some we that are living in diaspora, and I'm sure that the people living in other parts of the world too can relate to the things that we're going to be talking about today. So today we've got special guests. So we've got Mercy. Mercy is a social worker. She's a colleague of mine, and we worked together, for many years. And Mr. Tega Abobo is a business systems analyst. Mrs. Omor is a college teacher. Mrs. Janet is a primary teacher, and Mrs. Gabby is also a primary teacher. So I think the first thing I would say that kind of brings us all together is the fact that we are parents, first of all. So we are going to look at these topics from the angle of being parents and also of being professionals within our different fields. So I have kind of mapped it out into two stages. And what brought about this topic? Somebody left a comment on my one of my videos, and they asked, the person said, have you noticed that children kind of confide more in their teachers and people outside than their parents? And I kind of pondered on that statement for a while and said, come to think of it, that's actually true. Because I know my own little girl, for example, would tell the teacher everything. So there's no secret. Everything we discuss in the house, the teacher is telling me at school. There are some things that the teacher would even be telling me that I never knew before. So, and I know that some people, would relate to that. It made me kind of ponder on that topic a little bit to look at the positive sides of that and the negative sides of that. So I've come up with some questions. So the two questions we have here: why do kids trust their teachers more than their parents? That's the first question. And then the second one is, why do teenagers stay quiet when they should speak up? What are they afraid of? So I know this second one is a very big topic, but we are going to dive into that first one first. So I'm going to be going with Mrs. Jeanette first. What makes a child feel comfortable opening up to a teacher rather than their parents?
I want to say it's because we do a good job. But I think the main reason is that part of our job is creating a safe space for them where they can thrive. One of the biggest things about being a teacher is that you have to create an environment where the child feels safe. They're so safe to talk, safe to be themselves, safe to interact, safe to divulge anything in the classroom. The second thing is that because they see other children that are about the same age as them, and some of those other children talk freely, so
Hmm.
they feel, yeah, this is a safe space to talk. So I think that's the biggest reason why they feel safe to talk in the classroom.
Hmm.
Second reason is that it is part of our job to always, give them leading questions like, oh,
Hmm.
so what did you have for breakfast today? And the child will tell you, I was having my breakfast when mommy walked in, but she was sad. You see, the stories have started because they feel safe. And
Hmm.
it's just from one question. And when I hear that, I pick it up and I ask another question because I
Hmm.
want to get to the bottom of it. Because let's face it, safeguarding and child protection is an intrinsic part of our job. So we don't leave it like that, that, oh, the child said this, then we just ignore it. We
Hmm.
have to dig in deeper.
So I am going to go to somebody who is not a teacher now. So I'm going to go to Mr. Tega. So what role does
Yeah.
discipline play in whether a child trusts their parents?
So discipline brings, it's a way of instilling correction for the child to learn from the mistakes they've made. And, as a parent, you need to correct in love. So there's a time you need to be really cross. There's a time you correct in love. You bring back the child and say, look, this thing you've done, make the child aware. And it's like, teaching them how to be responsible, accountable for their actions. Uh, and doing it from, early stages that way, it helps a lot. Uh, the child becomes responsible. The child knows, okay, for every action I do, whether good or bad, there's a consequence. If I do something good, then there's a reward. If I
Mhm.
do something bad, then there's a consequence for it. So but my take is that discipline should be done with love. Because
Yeah.
if you do it out of you're harsh, then what tends to happen is over time the child might become resentful, and the child is not learning anything.
Thank
That's
you
the way
very
I see.
yeah,
Yeah.
lovely. Thank you very much. So from what you just said, I picked up a question, and I'm going to direct this to one of our teachers. I'm so glad we have three of you here today. So, because we are from the BAME community, Africans, and
Yes.
the way we correct children, I know things are fast changing now, but the way we correct children, some people say yes, it's still okay to correct children in that way, if you know what I mean. Sometimes we feel like spanking kids and things like that are still allowed. And a lot of people would say, no, those things are fast fizzling out. What level of correction would a teacher frown at? Or what sort of correction would you expect a parent, to apply in raising their children?
Well, I would say we always hear of gentle parenting, and even though people say gentle parenting has now made children very lax and they don't understand rules and all of that, I feel that talking to a child and explaining things to a child goes a much further way than just cracking the whip or spanking. Spanking for what? And this is what we see when they come into the school. The child comes into school, another child grabs his toy and that child spanks the other child because that's what he has learned. That when someone has done something that you don't like, you spank. Instead of learning to negotiate and say, oh, actually that's mine, can I have it back? Children sponge off adults, and it all starts from home. Like I always say, education starts from home. So spanking, I think we should take the approach of the gentle parenting, but have have it within safe parameters where we explain, we negotiate, we make them understand, and make them understand how not to do that again, so that they don't find themselves in that situation. It's what we do in the class and what we encourage parents to do at home.
Yeah. So I've seen a situation where somebody just raised their voice. We Africans, we like to shout a lot. Not necessarily get physical with the child this time, just raise their voice at the child. And that made the child a little bit emotionally,
Aback.
yeah. So
Yes.
the child got to school and started saying all sort of things, and then the teacher picked that up and that became safeguarding. Does that
Yes.
mean that without you physically beating a child, shouting at the child, does that trigger a safeguarding concern as well, would you say?
Yes. Yes. I mean, for me, and I know how many safeguarding forms or cause for concern forms I've had to fill out. Sometimes I try to negotiate with the parents and I bring them in because I understand both cultures. I straddle two cultures. I understand the new culture that I find myself in, and I understand the culture I'm coming from. But the parent doesn't have that perspective, and I try to bring them into that perspective to say, look, if your child comes into class and the minute I say, can you sit down, the child screams back at me. He's being very emotional. He doesn't understand empathy. He doesn't understand that his actions affect the community or the class. Then I have to note it down that we need to see. Some of these children might be in abusive homes. That's the first thing that should come, that we are taught to come to our minds, that we need to check what is happening at home. So even if it's just nothing is happening at home, it's just that the mom is used to shouting because it's a cultural thing. When they come into school and they don't, we teach them how to communicate, like I said, from the early years into PSHE in primary, into PSHE and civics in secondary. So it goes all the way through their education. And we see that that child is not fitting in, it's not trying to understand the consequences of their actions. We write a cause for concern. This child is prone to tantrums. This child is prone to giving into his emotional outbursts. when things like that start to come on and it's a regular thing, then it triggers something else, which I'm
Yeah,
sure you understand because
yeah,
that's where you work. I'm sure you will
definitely.
come in and see all the files that they've compiled.
Yeah.
But that's what we do every day. Report writing. You write reports about these children to see how they can fit in.
Mm.
Later on in life, it now causes something else because now the children are so used to trying to fit in that even when it's time for them to talk, they
Yeah.
just want to fit
Mm.
in and it just blends into it that way.
Wow, wow. Thank you so much. See, I'm scared of children so much that I ran to adults. Mercy and I didn't have anything to do with children's services. Gabby, from your own perspective, I know that you are from a different culture, but Gabby, you have children who are of African culture, Black culture as well. How do you kind of view these things? Do you think that our parenting style is a little bit excessive when it comes to disciplining our children?
Want to put me in trouble. um, no, I don't think so. I mean that sometimes you are at an end and you have to go above it because the children is not responding.
Yeah.
It just depends on the children. Sometimes I will be gentle with my children, with my child, with Hayat, for instance. And sometimes she's reaching the bottom of my patience and I have to shout. And it happens as well in class. You can go to class, and I will tell you in some class, the teachers who are best like respected, I would say, are the old one. Why? Because the old one, when you arrive at their end point, they begin to raise their voice, and suddenly the child is listening. I'm sorry, but it's what happened. So I've been to many classes and went gentle, gentle, gentle. But sometimes people don't want to hear. I can tell you sometimes I have arguments with my husband. He can be gentle, gentle, gentle until we arrive at the point where I'm not listening at all. And maybe I will have to raise my own voice. He will have to raise his voice. And it's the same with children. So I don't have the same point of view, but we have different point
Yeah,
of view. But
definitely.
it's just
Yeah,
it just
because
it just depends on the children. Some
yeah,
children you can do that and they are used it's not to be used to it because any child can listen. But some need a bit more, I won't say correction, but you will need to raise your voice on them
definitely.
because they won't be listening. They won't open their ears
Okay.
Yeah.
because they are used to have people like raising their voice on it as well.
Yeah,
Exactly. They're so used to people raising their voices before
yeah,
things get
Yeah,
done
Yeah.
that
yeah,
unless
yeah,
the unless so those are the kind of children we write down this child because in my class I don't shout. In fact, I train my children in such a way that the minute I start lowering my voice, they
yeah,
know okay, something is going on with this teacher.
good.
Because I go, okay, and I start lowering my voice. I'm just going to wait for you guys to listen to me. I might be very animated in the classroom because I'm quite
Mm,
animated. I like
yeah.
to play. I like to jump around with them. But when I stand still
mm,
and I start to lower my voice, some of them are like, okay, we have reached
yeah,
that point.
I
To get
think
yeah,
to that
the
point,
the effect is exactly the same. It's for them when you lower your voice, they know that they have reached your end point.
yes,
And where I will raise my voice, I can do the same with my children. If I begin to just not talk anymore, they will understand that it's the end now. And if I raise my
exactly,
voice, same. So it's just two ends that
Yeah.
sometimes you can reach. And it depends on the child. If the child needs you to lower, then you have to go down. And if they will understand it's the end, for some children, you will have to go up. It
wow.
just depends on the situation as well. If you're outside with lots of noises, the kids are fighting, you won't say, sorry, we have to stop fighting, but you will have to raise your voice and you know what I mean. So it just depends on all situations, etc. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
that's coming from a mother and a teacher person. That makes
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I
I
know
Well,
what you're
agree
talking
with
about,
that. I
Gabby.
agree with
well,
Gabby.
well,
Yeah,
In the teacher's defense, I think one thing she mentioned is about the evidence based.
Yeah.
I know we are all quick to say, especially people from our own culture who believe discipline and shouting. I wouldn't say discipline in this case, because I know somebody talked about gentle parenting.
Yeah.
To me, there's nothing like gentle parenting. Yeah, you're parenting the child, or you're not parenting the child. Let's just tell ourselves the truth. So I think it comes from a trail because I'm not a child protection social worker, but one good thing I know about the system is it's quite evidence based. Things
mm,
don't just happen in a vacuum. There's always those records of, and sometimes they're not going to pick up abuse. They might just pick up a child needs extra support. There's something more sinister going on that
Well,
it's not
yeah.
just that behavior. Yeah, so in the teacher's defense, which I'm really happy to hear that. And there's something you mentioned again, I think in your first answer, relating to children opening up to the teachers. That's the
Yeah.
environment I want my 4-year-old to be. You know, I want my 4-year-old to be able to know that my teacher is a trusted adult. But I think when it becomes a problem for me is when my child is struggling and he or she has kind of that struggle or feels you can't talk to mom. I'm
Hmm.
happy for you to
Mm.
speak to your teacher, but just make sure you're comfortable enough and happy enough to come to mom as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
so those two things,
Hmm.
you know what? I already want my child to come to your class now.
So, Amo, don't be in a rush to answer because there are so many questions for you being a college teacher. So we are coming to you.
Okay.
Just gather your strength. It's coming. So this brought me to this topic, and this is my own personal situation now. I have a daughter who is 4, and she joined the class just before she turned 4. She's the only
Right.
black in the class. That is no
Mm.
problem for me. There's just about 6 of them in that nursery class. And they have this report, this assessment that they do. So they asked me for permission, and I gave permission. So they did the report at first, and they came back with, oh, she's not great with communication. She couldn't do this. She couldn't play with her mates. She couldn't. So I felt, okay, she's just joined the class. Let me give her time. I now discovered that the first 2 months, when I spoke to the teacher, nobody knew her. So they were saying to me that 2 months she's been in the class. They said they don't really know her. That's why they came up with the report. I decided to wait for the next one. So the next one came about, and then they were writing the same thing, and I lost my patience there. Because they were telling me, like, my daughter doesn't play with people, she's not friendly, she doesn't communicate. And she's a different person at home. Like, when somebody's walking through the door, she's the first person who
Yeah.
is, playing with them. And I asked the teacher, I said, it's like you are describing somebody else here. This is definitely not my child. You cannot know my child more than me, the mother. You know, and I kind of challenged that to the point that my husband had to call the lady who did the assessment. And then the lady, knowing the job that we do, quickly started saying, oh, I'm sorry, I just wrote down what the teachers told me. Well, the teachers are telling me that an independent person came to do the assessment. But you are the ones who told her what to write down. And I had to challenge that. And then they brought that the third time, and I said, no, I'm not giving you consent to write that because
Good.
what you are writing does not reflect this child's, the way she is. So you look at that kind of report. Where do we place that? Where teachers feel all of a sudden that because they spend 6 hours with the children in a day, they now know the children more than the parents or more than the. Have you, I don't know. Have you ever seen something like that before? Mercy, you are not in that.
Yes.
Have you experienced that?
Yeah, I have. Again, um, because my daughter is almost, your daughter's age as
Yeah,
well, and I've my daughter, she was really heady as a 2-year-old. She's the youngest. Her immediate eldest, gave her like 7 years. So I
Right.
feel she always has that need to, want to be heard. She doesn't want to feel like the smallest. So she's quite thirsty at home. But whenever I go to pick her up or whenever a report comes back, is, oh, she's the sweetest girl. She does that. She does that. For me, it should be a good thing. But I know my daughter. So I think having raised two other older ones as well, sometimes the kids' behavior, especially at that age, doesn't reflect how they behave at
Mhm.
home as well.
Yeah,
You see, so I wouldn't. 6 hours is a significant amount of time to spend with a child 5 days a week. If your child goes to school five
yeah,
days a week, so
Yeah.
I take into consideration the teachers' report as well, because children can be different at home and children can be different in school. You see, so she's a lot more happier at home. The reference you made with your daughter, she
yeah.
has her twins, and those struggles, being black kids as well in an environment or in a class of maybe 29, white kids, they're the only black. It has a knock-on effect on these children,
That's true.
Yes,
whether
it
Mm.
we
does.
whether we like it or not. The struggle to fit in, even as adults. I still have that imposter syndrome. If I go to an environment, especially workplace, I'm
That's
a very
right.
jovial person. I'm sociable, but deep down, I still have those sort of, oh gosh, do I belong here? Then imagine a
Yeah.
child, their brain is still
Oh,
developing. Yeah, so I don't, I try to work with teachers because at the end of the day, I know what I know at home. The teachers know what they know in class.
that's correct.
Yeah, so
Mm.
I believe that's how I feel when it comes to those sort of reports. But when they're getting older, I wouldn't expect my 13-year-old to act differently, kind of significantly differently in
Yeah.
school and act
Mm.
even different at
Makes
home.
sense. Mm.
But at this age, 4, 5 to, yeah, I think I will have to work with teachers.
Yeah.
Um,
That's true. I mean, you made a point there. And to be honest, she's really improved now. According to them now, they're saying she's really improved now and she's playing a lot better. And so I want to ask a question now. So should parents now be concerned if their child trusts their teacher more than them? Should we be concerned,
Yes.
teachers?
Yes.
yes, I
Hmm.
will.
Can you
I'm a
please?
teacher, and yeah, you should be
Hmm.
concerned if your child trusts your teacher, her teacher, or his teacher more than you. It means that there's an imbalance somewhere. So I'll use my son as an example. So when we first moved outside of Nigeria, and we were at an international school, and he had learned he was in nursery in Nigeria, and he had learned to play the way Nigerian children play. You know, you kick the ball, you jump, they're quite rambunctious. But when we moved to the new country where we moved to, it was very serene. Everyone was gentle. So my son, he stood out, uh, and because of that, he got a lot more cautions. Oh, don't do that. And if you continuously tell a child, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. Now, I was new out of the country, so I trusted the system because coming from where I was coming from, that's what we had been brainwashed to do, to trust the system. So it got to a point where I think my son was trying to fit in and just get into the system. I was trying to get on with my job and he was trying to fit in. And the only way he knew how to fit in was to just follow the rules. He became such a rule follower because he knew that when he followed the rules and did exactly as he was told, he would get brownie, he would get moved up on the chat. Oh, you did well today. Yeah, he did well because he didn't speak up for himself, because he conformed, because he did everything that you asked him to do. It got to the point where he would then come home to me and I would say, no, but you should stand up for yourself. But it was like he was trusting the teacher because he felt I spend a lot of my time there. So I'm going to do what makes everybody there happy. You are one at home, and there are lots of them, lots of
Yeah.
children in the class who tell on themselves. Children are like that. Oh, teacher, this person, in case the teacher is not noticing. It looked as if he trusted them and he was happy to tell them things because they were very happy to get more information out of him. But it wasn't really a positive thing. And by the time I got to the bottom of it, I found out that no,
Hmm.
I want a child who's happy in his environment, not someone who's fearful of his environment to the point where he's happy to do anything his teacher tells him to do just because he wants to fit into the system. So, yes, if your child trusts the teacher a lot more than you,
Hmm.
it's not because they are not afraid. It is more a case of, let me just do what they want me to do.
Yeah.
Okay, I trust you that when I'm good, you will just leave me alone. And yeah, it's a slippery slope from there.
So as parents, you know, we don't have a rule book to use, or we also learn, and it's how would I put it? You have different situations. No two kids are the same.
Hmm.
There are instances in this country, the elites, I can call prime ministers, where their children misbehaved
Hmm.
and they gave it to them, you know. So this thing about gentle parenting, I believe in correcting in love. As far as it's done with love, it's coming from a place of love. Yeah, that's the best approach. Not gentle parenting. And you need to be careful of all these terms, that they label on your kids. You should know your child better.
Hmm.
It's a shame if your child cannot come. Yeah, they should confide in teachers. The teachers there are there to support. If there's
Yeah.
any issues or what have you. But it will be a shame, an indictment if your child cannot confide in you.
To you. Hmm.
I'm not saying you should be your child's best friend. You are not your child's best friend. You are your child's parent.
Hmm.
You and it should be from once they're born. You're close to them. You're available. Your availability, because these days we you know, packed up with work and all that. They come
Hmm.
home late, they're in bed and all that.
Hmm.
You should have time for them. You should have time for them. Bond with them. Even animals do it. They bond with their offsprings. You
But
bond
that's
with them.
gentle parenting.
No, no, I'm not
Combination
talking
of
about
both.
gentle. I'm not talking about gentle parenting,
But
right? I mentioned elites like prime ministers. So I'll mention a name. Tony Blair, when his son did something, I think in
Hmm.
2000 or so. His son did something stupid and he gave it to his son. And then they tried to call him out on BBC when he was interviewed. I think it was the breakfast show. They tried to, and he spoke up for himself, Tony Blair. Did we ever hear his son misbehave again? No. So it's a carrot and stick approach. Back in the 80s, I knew, no, I did something. Until this day, I still remember it. Yes, when my mom went to pick me up from school, and my late younger brother, she went to pick us up, and I just wandered away. I found myself home, but yeah, I crossed the road and all that, went to a corner shop, an Indian corner shop. I still remember. It's very clear in London here. My mom waited for me to cross back and she gave it to me. It was a bright sunny day. My mom doesn't remember, but we reminded her. We all laughed over it. Did she hate me? No. Did I? Did anything? Was there a safeguarding? No. She did it publicly
Hmm.
there and then, and I never, you know. So I believe correcting in love, establish that bond with your child. Because in school, there are things you learn in school. They come. You have to unlearn, relearn. As a parent, you're supposed to do your job also as a parent. So as
Hmm.
you said, they put out a report about your daughter, and you've rightly so you've challenged it because
Hmm.
your daughter doesn't come across that way at home, and not only at home, she goes out to family and friends, she goes out other places.
Of course.
The church,
Hmm.
they have the school set up there,
Hmm.
children set up there. She's interacting with. So why is it only in school? Then there's
Yeah,
something wrong. There's
definitely. That was
something
what I
wrong.
thought myself too, that
So
something is
so
wrong at school.
rather than just put
Hmm.
uh, and schools are they're good at doing that, to get the workload out of the way and all that. I have friends who are teachers and I know what I'm talking about. They're under pressure. And I'm not
Hmm.
indicting teachers, but I'm saying as parents, correct in love, discipline in love, right? As
Hmm.
far as you're doing it in love, it's for the better interest of the child, rather than shouting, screaming. And there's a cultural background difference. Italians, for instance, when I used to work in the bank years ago, many years ago, this guy came in with his mother, and the way he was talking to the mother, he was talking. And then I talked to my colleague said, oh, that's how the Italians talk. It's not that he was disrespectful, but that's how they talk, that's how they express themselves. And I know we are good at shouting down on children, which is not
Hmm.
good. I
Yeah.
don't encourage that because you frighten the child and all that.
Hmm.
But there's a place, when you've spoken to the child softly and the child is not listening, and then you raise your voice, or there's sometimes you don't say anything, you just give the look.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know the look when your mom looks at you and the
of
eyes are
course,
talking. The eyes are talking. She's not
Yeah.
saying anything. So,
Hmm.
but all I'm saying is let it be done with love. It's
Hmm.
for the better interest of the child. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you
can I
so
can I
much.
add something? Can I add
Okay.
something here? What he has just said now. When I talked about gentle parenting, I said a lot of people have taken gentle parenting and done something else with it. What you've just said is exactly what gentle parenting was meant to be. Let the child understand. If you have, if some people don't talk to children, they don't
Hmm.
let the child know the mistakes. They just maybe take a cup or a plate and throw it at the child.
Hmm.
What does the child, how does the child,
Yeah.
that's not gentle parenting, that's authoritarian parenting. There's neglectful parenting as well. Some people take gentle parenting and they do neglectful parenting
Hmm.
and they call it gentle parenting. You know what you did wrong. So that means your mom would have found a way, whether verbally or through body language.
My mom gave
And
it to me. She didn't find. I was 4 at the time. 4 years. 4. Yeah.
You were at
I
the receiving
crossed
end.
Bedford
That's why you
Bedford
remember it
West
till
Street.
today.
I
Yeah. Thank you. Oh, this is, in fact, if we can continue to go like this, we won't leave here today. So I want to go to the teenagers now. That's where I'm actually itching to go. So you know the teenagers, and that's where the complexity comes in. Why teenagers stay quiet when they should speak up? I have some teenagers in my house, so I know why I'm asking this question. So we now come to Omo, please. Tell us.
Okay, thank you very much. There are several reasons why teenagers will not speak up for themselves. And the first one is the fear of judgment.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the first one, that they might be misunderstood by their peers, by their teachers, by their parents.
Hmm.
Like, what if I speak up for myself? What will happen? What if I speak up for myself? Would they understand me? Like, several years back, because I was in the secondary school before I went into further education, there was a student whereby she spoke up for herself in the classroom. It actually got really bad, and parents were invited. All that happened, and it actually, like, maybe backfired. Some when some teenagers speak up, they would speak up too much. So it
Hmm.
actually, like, backfired on this particular student, whereby, okay, she was the parent had to come in, blah blah blah, and all that. So this now go into like past experience, which is one of the points whereby teenagers will not want to speak up for themselves, like what has happened in the past. So when this, after all the scenario and all that, this teenager had to change her seats in the classroom. She had to do
Hmm.
independent learning, no more peer learning from her own side, because she doesn't want trouble. That was a problem, because if you have to write a report or something, then you still
Hmm.
have to write a report that this student is not engaging with
Yes.
other parents, is not, and so on. So lack of judgment is just the main thing. Social media,
Hmm.
another one.
actually, I actually have that question here. Go on. Answer it.
Social
Wow.
media, another
Okay.
one.
Hmm.
These days, teenagers, I practiced something last week with my husband. In fact, we were discussing it days back. This is our hey hi. I don't know where it's going.
Hmm. That's true. Yeah.
So I
Hmm.
had something I did wrong in the house, in which I actually hacked AI. Okay, this, if this happened and all that. And AI was actually responding to me as if AI was my friend. I
Hmm.
was asking, like, in at intervals, in hours. In fact, there was a time I wrote, "I'm still worried." AI still responded to me like, "Oh, don't be worried. It's been 36 hours now. Nothing will happen to you." So some of these teenagers, actually, social media is now their friend.
Their life. Yeah.
Wow. Sorry, has
When
anybody
I told
experienced
my
this?
husband this thing, my
Sorry.
husband was like, "Yes." In fact, it was as if we did the practice together. It was like, yes. He
Wow.
also did that. That there are some times whereby if he feels bothered, he will just like talk to AI first before. So
Yeah.
some of these teenagers now, that's what they do, like social media.
Has anybody experienced that here? Any other person? Because I've never heard it before. Mercy.
The
Has it
AI.
gotten that bad?
Oh,
Is it
yes.
AI?
Yeah.
You're
AI, that
talking about
children are now
AI.
talking to AI like their body.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Yes.
AI gathers a lot of information. That's how,
Information. Yes.
and it's going to
Wow.
be
Hmm.
AI is going to be the future, replacing jobs, even going to the
Oh my
hospital to your GP,
goodness.
you have to talk to AI first.
Yeah.
AI would prescribe drugs and all that. That's where it's going.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, well, the doubt so the doubt the cons the downside of social media and the internet is that on children, especially teenagers, if it's not regulated, if it's not checked, their activities on it is not checked, they become addicted to it. So
Exactly.
like you said, they now it's like their go-to,
Mm.
AI, their friend, and anything they want to, and then
Mm.
other social media handles. So you have TikTok, you have all that.
Yeah.
You have
Yes.
incidences where children were, you have teenagers practicing some stunts where they just fall and all that. It led to the deaths of some teenagers. They pick things up off there very easily. So as parents, we need to also, from a young age, educate and guide our children with their access to this social media thing,
Yeah.
so that when they are on their own, as they become, young teenagers on their own, they know they go on it with responsibility, being responsible, because there's peer pressure, joining what's it called, the groups, maybe what they play, all set
Yeah.
games that are not too good, you know, not good for them, and it messes up their
Of
psyche
Wow.
and all that.
course.
Hmm.
So we have a lot. Parents, teachers, the whole lot. We have a lot in
Okay. So can I
making
just
sure
come in
our
from this
children
angle,
are
please?
safe.
So I'm listening to what everybody has said now, and I want to ask this question. You see, some teenagers they get into trouble at school. Like maybe with their friends, or we know a lot of things happening in the country where teenagers get into wrong with mingle with wrong friends
Friend
and things like that,
groups. Yeah.
Wrong groups.
and then they are in danger and they don't speak up to anybody. They don't speak up to their parents when they get home, even their teachers, for the fear of being labeled,
Yeah.
like you said about earlier about being judged. So what kind of how do you think a teenager should handle that kind of situation based on what you've seen?
I think because another point is communication style preference. So we should, this still falls back on what we've been talking about, coming from the early years people,
Yeah.
and and then when they grow up to becoming teenagers, because we have, as we differentiate in the classroom, we have lots of like different kind of children
Mm,
and learners. We communicate differently.
yeah.
In fact, for me, it was when I grew up, I would say maybe when I was in the university, if I still do it, my best communication is writing. So when I was younger, if you call like for me face to face and say, "Oh, what happened?" I might be crying. I will not speak.
Yeah.
But if you ask me to write what happened, I will write.
Wow.
I will tell you what happened in my writing. This was
Yeah.
what happened. This was what happened, and that is why some of them still go back to this social media, whereby they'll prefer to text their friend. They would
Mm,
prefer to chat with their friend because they can do that more without communication.
So that's why in some classes you can see that they have Rory jar. I think you have it
okay.
in primary Rory
Mm,
jars. You have a jar and just put anything you want in it
if you're worried
for
about
tourists.
something.
And in
Mm,
some, so when working in primary, it's what they do, but most of the time the children don't do it because they know that someone may see them doing
Yeah.
it, putting something in the jar. So they don't use it. The jar is always empty.
mm,
So what I saw when I was working in secondary, they put a poster in school, and the children had just to go on a website, and they could send the message, and it was going straight away to the
okay.
safeguarding team, or not necessarily a safeguarding team, but someone will have a look at it, and then they would
Yeah.
feel safe to speak. They don't have to put their name, just anonymous, and
Mm,
then it stays in the school, so it's not going out, and then they can have all the information so easily, and they can go on it if they have to do early in stage or anything. It's a really
mm,
good process. I thought about it,
mm,
and it's really good.
Still going back to your question that says that why are children more comfortable with their teachers? Because in situation whereby there's a maybe a cause for concern, or maybe even there's
Yeah.
an issue with a teenager or something in school, we know how we
Talk
we
to
we can
them.
we can be with them for hours just on
Yes.
that situation, for
mm,
hours, and say, okay, don't worry, I'm holding your hand. We talk to them like, I'm with you. I understand
okay.
what is
I
happening.
see.
I
That
understand you.
approach.
I'm
Mm,
holding your hand. When you're ready to talk to me, when you're ready to speak, I will be here. I'm ready to talk to you. They would want to speak up. Unlike we parents, whereby we like, are
what's
you
wrong
ready?
Yeah.
with you now? Talk now.
Are you talk now? What is wrong with you?
Mr. Tega, I can see your hand
Yeah.
up.
No. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. So again, where we shouldn't be allowing this happen where a teenager something happens and they find it difficult not to speak up, especially to their parents, because of the way the society is today. Most parents, or some, or don't even have the time
Mm,
to
Yeah.
be there
that's true.
for their children, and there's a gap, right? So where there's that gap, the children go on the internet or elsewhere
Mm,
to fill it. And God forbid you have cases, if the things that happen these days,
Yeah.
when you do a
mm,
root
it's
cause
really scary.
analysis, you drill down,
Mm,
you find out that it's okay, maybe it's a dysfunctional home. Now that child has fall in the hands with gangs. The gangs, through bullying and what have you, they
mm,
use them as bait to do their bidding. You
Yes.
know, like the people who peddle drugs and they use children. They use
Yes.
young, yeah, they do. And these children, it's like their lives are sold off to these gang members. They
Yes.
have to do their bidding. And this, if you tell anybody this, what's going to happen to you? In the first place, as parents, we shouldn't be allowing this happen. Something will always tell you as the parent that something not right.
And it's particularly difficult. Mercy, do you want to chip in? It's particularly difficult when you have a full-time job. And like it's so hard. I don't know how people juggle it. I'm struggling
Yeah.
myself. And that's
I
why
can.
I'm looking to Jakarta to run back to Nigeria where I can have time to raise my kids.
Yeah.
So Mercy, please tell us a little bit. Then we'll come
Yeah,
back to Jeanette.
I believe the first thing is the relationship.
Hmm.
So yeah, I can remember one of the days we were having a conversation. I told you I have a chat with my 4-year-old. In the midst of all her blabbing, I will pick up something. I'll
Hmm.
pick up how
Yes.
her day went. I'll pick up what has gone on in school. So I think if you start talking to the children, talking to your children, I know some people, oh, I don't have that time. It's really, really important. My 13-year-old, no conversation is stupid, because I
Hmm.
know most of us African parents, oh, how dare you talk to me? Or kind of why do you tell me stories about what's going on in class? I want to know because with what's going on in class, it will kind of help me figure out how you're managing yourself. Teenagers will not come
Hmm.
and tell you, oh, mommy, I'm struggling. It all comes up in conversations.
That's true.
So if a child feels this is a safe place, my mom is my safe place, my dad is my home is my safe place to talk about things, they will open up to you. You know, and another thing as well is availability. We just
Hmm.
mentioned that it is difficult. We all have our full-time jobs, but one thing I always do, B knows I'm not taking any job, even if it's £500 an hour. That won't allow me drop off my
Yes.
kids in the
Yeah,
morning
that's
and
a
pick
good
them up.
point.
Yes.
Hmm.
So I always raise that any job, all the jobs I've done now in years, because I believe I am very busy. Yes, I do a full time job, but the conversation I have with my children, dropping them off at school, it's the best conversation I can ever have with them in the
Hmm.
morning.
Yes.
Throughout the year, picking them up as well. I observe their faces. I look at their faces. Yes, I'm that mom. Oh, Mama, you okay? What happened in school today? Those are the things that bring up, conversation.
Yeah.
My son will come and start telling me, oh gosh, there was drama today in school. I'm talking
Mm.
about year 7 boy. Oh, this person's boyfriend. Oh, mom, you can't imagine. These little children, they're talking about boyfriends and girlfriends. But I want him to talk to me about it.
Hmm.
We're talking about 11-year-olds, but I don't see it as a stupid story. I don't dismiss it. In 10 minutes, in 5 minutes, as I said, what I get out of them when I drop them off and when I
Hmm.
pick them up, trust me, no interview will ever get those informations. So it's
Yes.
The,
it at every given time, just take opportunity of whatever safe space and make sure they feel they are you're safe enough for them to open up
no,
to.
listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Final words now. Let's start wrapping up. So, any tips, any teachers? Let's start with you. What advice would you give to parents? What tips would you give to parents to help us, better raise our children?
I would say, like Mercy said, having the time to speak with them. So, exactly like Mercy, my daughter, my first daughter, she speaks a lot when we are in the car as well.
Hmm.
So when I'm one to one with her, or when my husband is one to one with her, my husband comes back and say, "Oh, Hishma told me that, 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 that." And why she didn't say that before? I think just because she was not on her own with us, and she didn't have, as you said before, the time for us, because when she's at home she's always doing something else. I'm doing something else. Where we are in the car, we have nothing else to do except talking, because we're just looking at the view outside, so nothing to do. So we want to talk when we're in the car, and I think it's very important to have that time. Sometimes she speaks to me when I'm cooking, because she knows that my ears are there, and I think it's very important to for them to trust you, to know that if they tell you something, you won't overreact. Because I
Hmm.
remember when I was a child, and still now, I don't tell anything to my mother, because when I tell her something, she overreacts on
Hmm.
everything. A little something will make her crazy, because not not because she's a bad person, it's just because she's worried. That's normal. That's her first instinct as a mother. She's very worried, so she will straight away overreact. And in some case that's good, but in the case when someone wants to open up to you, it's become a problem, because you
Hmm.
can't open up to the person. So when Hishma is, my daughter, for instance, Hishma or Hayat, or anyone is talking to me, I try to stay calm. Just think first, maybe leave it for now and come back to it later. Have time to think
Okay.
before to go back on it. Like as I said before as well, when you shout on them, then just leave it. You shout for one time, then they stop what they are doing, and then you come back to them and you can talk gently, etc., and have a real discussion with them. Because when you begin to shout or you begin to just being at the end, you won't be able to have a real discussion with them. It's always better to just give them some time. Yeah.
Wow, it's a good point.
Yeah.
Good point. Omo?
I would encourage parents to go into schools. Like, okay, we are busy, but let someone should be available for these children. If they have written something in your children's school, if we have, because we are the teachers, you can go in there and go and challenge them. What has happened? My husband do that a lot. He's also a teacher, but not practicing, but he does that a lot. You just go in there, you've written this, what has happened, you have to explain, and the teachers will have to explain what has happened. But when they see that, okay, no one is coming, even that can actually raise a safeguarding concern, because no one cares about these kids. They are not even asking about what we have written. They don't, because they put notes in these children's bag, in this kids' bag, where especially the primary school and early years, there are notes, and some as some parents that will not even check their bag in 2 weeks. They're just bringing the bag and they are taking the bag back. They are bringing it, taking it back, and all that. So yes, let's just try and create time for them.
Wow, thank you so much. That's a good advice. So, thank Brother Tega, any last?
So, yeah, everyone has spoken well. I would say be there for you. As parents, we need to be there for our children. Like someone said, you make yourself available, when like the parents' evening, you go through their notes, their books, and all that. Yeah, that way you are having communication with your child and also the school. If there's any concerns the school has, you're going through why is the child not doing well in maths or in English or in spellings? The teacher is able to communicate that with you. You are able to feed back to your child and know what corrective measures to put in place. Correcting love, discipline in love, um, build trust, that bond, trust, so that you and your children or child are one, kind of.
Yeah.
A child can say, "Oh, there's nothing I'll tell my mom or my dad. This I know that they're going to have my back, even if I've done something wrong." You know, that trust should be there.
Very
And
important. Yeah.
yeah, so that's just my take. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So then last advice you want to give us?
So, my last advice would be that it's one thing for you to tell parents to find time. It's another thing to help them see how to find time. I
Okay.
remember when. So one of the things about me is that for 10 years I went off social media. And the reason why I went off social media was because I just felt scrolling through Facebook would take up my time, you know. That time I could be spending with my children. I just felt, was that necessary, or was it more necessary to hang out with them? Because I was alone with them for about 10 years. I became a single parent, and I was
Okay.
traveling around the world with them. So I knew that I was their support system. When you take a child out of their home country and you bring them to a new country, you have to create that support system for them. I mean, like Tega said, it starts from something as small as, oh, the child, is standing at the football pitch because he has gone to the football pitch by himself because mom is busy, maybe taking care of the other children. And then there's a big person there saying, oh, have this, or have that. And the next thing, can you take this bag for me to that house? And before you know, the child is a mule. And I realized that, what am I doing? I have to provide that support system for my children. So my son was 12. I went off social media and I came back when he was 22. My children are at university now.
Wow.
And that's when I started YouTube, trying to help other parents like me in the diaspora. There are times in a teenager's life when my son went through this and he would want to go into his room and just stay on his phone. I will open the door. How are you? So what happened? I would sit on his bed. I would be maybe, children, teenagers' rooms. I'll be folding, but I'm there. And he knows my mom is there. And I say, come downstairs. I want to cook. Help me peel the onions. And then I'm doing this. And gradually I start bringing him out of the room. But I can only do that if I remove things that distract me
mm,
myself. And that's what I had to do that. Something had to give. Where do we get the time? There are things that we do that we can understand. Okay, is this necessary, or is my child more important to me?
mm,
And
mm,
and and that's what I would urge people.
mm,
Just take a stock of your life and see which one is more important. Is it important for me to sit on the phone and be chatting with my relatives in
mm.
Nigeria, or is it good enough for me to put it on maybe FaceTime so that all of us can chat while we're making dinner? So it feels like a community thing,
Mm.
because that child has to belong to a community, or else they'll find a community outside that
Inside.
will not be productive.
Thank you so much. Wow. Wow. I think I have a lot of work to do myself because my son spends a lot of time in the room. And now that you're mentioning it, I think there might be an issue there. Mercy, I'm sorry I cut you out earlier.
To be
Last
honest,
advice.
this has really, really been an interesting one, and
Yeah.
I've learned a lot myself as a mother. And but I think my last word will be: let's not make it about ourselves. It's
Mm,
not really us. We're talking about young people who are navigating life.
mm,
Sometimes I'll say to my daughter, "Oh, when I was growing up." Because they are growing as well, I try to encourage her to stand up for
mm,
herself, and be confident and all whatnot. She reminded me, Mom, that was in the 90s, but which is actually true. So how I grew up or how I was raised, there's some values I learned from my
mm,
mom and having grown up in Nigeria myself. I think it's about that flexibility and that understanding that this is a different environment now. It doesn't have to be streamlined how my mom
mm,
raised me. So it's about once you realize that these are young children, navigating life. Wow, we are there to guide them as parents,
mm,
and we can only build trust. We just talked about safe space. The only way we can build this safe space is kind of building that trust. No, not being judgmental, realizing that we all as individuals will make mistakes. So if you make them know that, you know what, as human beings, we all make mistakes. They will come to you when they've done wrong. They'll come to you when they've done right. So it's about not making it about ourselves as parents.
mm,
You know,
Yeah.
as a migrant myself, I know the push for us to push the first generation migrants, to be the best they can be. But at the same time, sometimes we need to take a step back, you know,
mm,
let them be children. They live in a civilized world now.
mm.
Whether we like it or not, we'll pull them from Nigeria. I had mine here anyway, but I'm just kind of making reference to pulling children from Nigeria, bringing them into a different culture. And as Janet rightly mentioned, supporting them in a new environment.
Mm.
I'm not 100, but I'm old enough and I've been in this country for a very long time now. But I still struggle, talk less of a child who was pulled from what they know, to
Yeah.
a new environment. So yeah, so not about ourselves, no judgment. Um yeah, yeah, that's all I can
Lovely.
say.
Lovely.
I
Thank
love
you
that.
so much. Thank you so much, everybody. We're going to end it here today. Well, I'm sure people out there have learned. Look out to the comment section. I'm sure people will, let you know how they feel and how much they've learned from this video as well. So I really appreciate everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And
Thank
have a
you.
lovely evening. Bye bye.
You
Yeah,
too.
bye, all. Bye, all.
Bye.
Thank you.